Hey there, folks. It's me, RC Mulhare, and I was going to do my typical typed out post on my writing blog over on Goodreads, but I'm a little typed out because I've been typing stories like crazy today when I haven't been at the day job, so I figured I'd just chat about what I'm working on at the moment, or should be working on at the moment. um, Rather than type it out and use more of my typing spoons, which I should be reserving for a project that got slightly derailed since last week was not a very good week in terms of my emotional health and other things. It was just one of those weeks where everything that could go wrong went wrong, and I'm not going to go into it any further because I don't want to think about it. The horror, the horror. Anyway, but I've been keeping busy with my writing, obviously, and that's hence why there's been a bit of a slowdown on updates on the writing blog, because I've been actually doing the writing, or trying to do the writing, when life hasn't been throwing a whole bucket of curveballs at me. But right now I have just recently sold another Herbert West Reanimator story, which should be coming out in, I believe, the October issue of Dead Man Tome's free-to-read magazine, which, when that goes live, I will be posting the links, but I figured I'd give you guys the heads up and say, hey, I got another Reanimator story out there, yay! I have a million ideas for those, and I keep wanting to get my Donut Horror stories published, and so far I've only got one of those published, and this will be my second Reanimator story. So I worry, am I going to get referred to as that Reanimator girl? I want to be known as the Donut Horror girl. Anyway, like, there's other people that have the Reanimator title, and not just Jeffrey Combs. It's like, they're welcome to it. I want something different. But I suppose editors will take the stories that they like, and you just got to find the right editor to send the right story to in some cases. So I apparently have found my niche with these Reanimator stories of mine. So that one's going up. That'll be one of your Halloween treats. Another Halloween treat will be the annual issue of Weird Book magazine. Every October they put out some kind of spooky annual anthology thingamabob, and I have a story coming up in that. That's Yellow Label VHS tape, which is a weird little tale that combines, it's a contemporary story for a change. It combines 80s technology with internet legends and The King in Yellow. So this one I'm especially proud of. It's a lot of little things that I put into it, little twiddly things that kind of have intrigued me or have been part of my world, part of life as I know it. And I figured I'd just toss it all together into this one crazy stew, and it came out as an excellent story, and the good folks over at Weird Book liked it. So that one will be out sometime in October as well, so Halloween treats on the horizon. So those are the next stories getting published. I'm in talks for a kind of horror comedy kid story. I can't say much more about it, but it's could be some interesting things coming up with that. I've kind of wanted to do a kid's book. I've kind of wanted to do something with Lovecraftian elements, and apparently I pulled it off. So this will be something to look forward to. I mean, some of the best Lovecraft-inspired books that I have seen recently, of more recent vintage rather, have been kid books, basically. I mean, there's a fellow who's put out these little board books. One is a Lovecraftian alphabet entitled C is for Cthulhu, of course. And if you want a basic primer on all things Lovecraftian beasties, it's actually a very good place to start. I mean, it's might be cute and colorful, but it's also eldritch and weird and delightful, and I'm sure the old gent from Providence would find it hilarious. I mean, maybe a little what at first, but then just kind of, he wasn't above his odd jokes involving his own beasties. I think there was some, I want to say there was some letter of his where he threatened to stick a shoggoth on somebody. So, why not, we're playing with a sandbox. Why not literally play it as a sandbox? You know, let's build some crazy castles. So, yeah, so I'm tossing my hat into the Lovecraftian kid book bandwagon, as it were. So, you know, so there's that. And for the works in progress, I'm typing up a little tiny short story, kind of a kid's, not exactly a kid's story. It is a kid's story, or a story for kids of all ages, inspired by a friend of mine back when I was a kid who was into all kinds of spooky stuff, and her whole, you know, spooky ooky things just used to kind of me out when I was, you know, oh gosh, grammar school age, early, you know, junior high school / middle school age. We kind of drifted apart in high school because we were kind of in different worlds, and you know, she was doing different things and I was doing different things from what she was up to, so we just, you know, we just kind of drifted apart. Although someday if we bumped into each other, I'd be, you know, I'd actually be saying, hey, remember how I used to be weirded out by all the spooky stories and ghost stories and Stephen King books and whatnot that you used to read? Guess what? Guess what I'm writing? So, I wouldn't exactly say she was one of the people that set me towards horror, but she kind of gave me the initial inoculation towards it, and I might have been a little resistant or hesitant towards said inoculation, but, you know, it all worked out, so I turned out all right. But, yeah, there's a character in the story that's inspired by her, and there's also, the main part of it is based off of a weird experience that I had when I was about, it was the summer that I turned 12, and I saw something strange walk through our yard, which that's all I'm going to leave. That's all I'm going to say about that. That's what I'm going to leave it at, because I kind of don't want to spoil too much of the surprises on the one hand, but on the other hand, there's a little part of me that's, I won't say I'm hesitant to talk about this incident, but it's the kind of thing that, you know, did I really see that? Did I just make it up? So, you know, there's some circles I will talk about it in, you know, cryptid discussions, because it appeared to have been a very cryptic cryptid, one of the lesser known ones. No, I did not see Bigfoot in my backyard. It was too small to be Bigfoot. Littlefoot? Something. We're going to leave it at that, and especially the sort of, if I can luck out and this story winds up finding a place out in print or spoken word or something or other, then, you know, I kind of want to keep some things under my hat. Well, the hat that I'm not wearing. But, you know, kind of keep some things as a secret, as a surprise, keep you all guessing. So I'm typing up that one. And I'm also continuing to type up my work in progress Book of the Ways, which deals with, yep, my Eldritch Tome, the Book of the Ways, which I referenced in 2 other stories, one published, one not published, and the published one being Handmaid of the Key, which is in Weird Book 38, and that's the one I think I've talked about elsewhere. I shopped it around for like 2 years trying to find just the right publisher to publish it with, and I had editors that liked the plot but didn't necessarily like the style, and I had editors that liked the style but didn't necessarily like the plot, and I got a little discouraged and I very nearly shelved it, but then, you know, Weird Book had an open call, and I thought, okay, we're going to send this one out to them and see what they think, and if they don't, you know, if they're, you know, if it doesn't pass muster with them, we'll just, you know, try to rework it and see what needs to be done to fix this thing up. Lo and behold, that one took, and, you know, I'm very much pleased with that. I'm typing that one up, not exactly as we speak, but I was typing it a little while ago. I should get back to it because I have a page quota that I've set for myself, and I haven't quite met it, at least not for the night. But the night is still young. Yes, I'm that crazy horror writer that will stay up to absurd hours to finish working on something, although I'm trying to get in earlier than I used to. I mean, I've got to the point, health-wise and age-wise, where I'm not staying up till 4 in the morning writing like I used to. My body just can't take it. So, try and be good to myself. So, That's in a state of being typed. I'm maybe halfway through, maybe a third of the way through. I'm somewhere between a third and the halfway through, which, you know, I'm kind of getting down to the deadline here and really need to work on that, so probably shouldn't ramble too much here. But things that I'm working on writing, I am writing several, of course, Lovecraft-inspired pieces. One is a short story for Scott Jones's next clever themed anthology, which I think is titled Monstrous Outlines. And the shtick there is the stories have to deal with disguises that don't quite work. You know, masks that don't quite fit. You know, something that's trying to look like something normal, but it doesn't look quite like it should, and that just kind of does the uncanny valley thing and just weirds out the onlooker. So, I kind of had seen this one before, you know, before talking to a friend of mine in the New England horror writers, or the Lovecraftian quarter of it, and it kind of hadn't really hooked me, but then the way he talked about it somehow just grabbed me, and I thought, okay, I gotta write a thing for this, and ooh, I know just what I'm gonna write about. Yeah, it's gonna be another Dutch horror story, and this time I'm dealing with Wilbur Whately and his tenuous relationship with clothes, because first off, dude is weirdly shaped because dude is, you know, an half elder god, half human hybrid thingamabob trying to disguise himself in a person suit. And it doesn't quite work because, okay, in addition to having appendages where appendages should not be, and very strange, I guess you call them, I want to say hind legs, but very strange below the waist. And not just the appendages where appendages should not be, but also, dude's like something between like 7 and 8 feet tall, so, you know? Definitely shopping in the wide and tall section of Sears and Roebuck if they had one. I guess they would have had Sears and Roebuck back then, but danged if you can find clothes that can fit them, so. And I'm also combining this with an idea that I had for, you know, this, he's going from Dunwich to Arkham, trying to get that book that he's been trying to get from the Arkham Miskatonic University Library. Yeah, words, what are they? And there's this lady traveling on the bus or the train or whatever public transportation, is involved, and she's like, who is this guy? He's polite, but he's weird to be around. So, playing with those ideas, and also, the lady in question has her own slightly tenuous relationship with clothes, although it's much more down to earth and kind of plays into being the other, capital T, capital O, in, situations where you don't quite fit in and you're trying your darndest to fit in, and gets interesting. Although hers is much more down to earth. It's not, certainly not being, an elder god human hybrid who's trying to blend in with regular people. Although, regular people, what are those? Anyway, so I'm working on that one. This was a story I didn't plan to write in this season, but it's grabbed my attention and I'm having fun writing it, and it's also kind of a buffer against another story that I'm working on, which is for Apotheosis 2, or at least that's what I'm planning to send it to, which deals with sort of post-apocalyptic tales in a universe where, yes, the Elder Gods have returned and cracked through into our universe and are making our planet over into their kind of territory to dwell in. And this one is extremely grimdark. This is about one of the grimmest things I've ever worked on, and it's the kind of thing where I write a few paragraphs and I have to put it aside because it's just, and on top of that, I'm setting it in my home state of Massachusetts, and I don't want to hurt the landscape, but that's what's, That's what's going to have to happen, because you know those things aren't going to take well to, you know, things that Earth creatures need, because they don't work by the laws of physics as we know them. So, you know, so, and it also kind of, I'm kind of drawing on some other really grim post-apocalyptic type stuff. I think there's a little bit of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, and a little bit of the Animatrix Second Renaissance Part 2, which was, you know, if you know me, you know that, you know, I utterly love the Matrix franchise. I mean, my username just about everywhere that I'm not using my actual name or my pen name, my username is Matrix Refugee, because I discovered the Matrix series at a time when I was going through something that was, you know, I had a family revelation that was every bit as shocking as finding out that your life is a computer simulation, and, you know, you're really just, you know, a human battery plugged into a giant supercomputer, and your body is in the real world in this pod full of red goo. So, you know, kind of drawing on that. I know what you're thinking. How is that tying with Lovecraft? Well, some of those, you know, if you remember from the Matrix movies, some of those artificial intelligences have these housings that definitely look like Lovecraftian beasties. Yes, I'm talking about the squiddies, you know? Come on, you know? They don't look like, you know, they don't look like, well, yeah. If they don't look like mechanical Cthulhu to you, then you're not, you know, you haven't read up on Lovecraft and things of that nature as much as I have. So, yeah, I'm kind of combining all of that into a really strange melting pot, and it's just a weird story to write. And yeah, it's grimdark, and well, actually, after the kind of week that I had last week, it's like I'm kind of tapping on all the blah that I went through, and just using that to just kind of, you know, throw stuff on page and see what sticks. So that one is that one is a work in progress that is progressing slower than I'd like, but I got some time left. It's not due until the end of the year, so I got time. And the next project, well, actually the one that's due slightly before that, is a story for the New England Horror Writers. Has a anthology for folks in their group, which is Wicked Weird, or Wicked Weird, as I like to pronounce it with an exaggerated Boston accent. And for this one, I'm drawing on some weird lore from the town where I was physically born, the city of Lowell. There is a cemetery that I believe was modeled after Mount Auburn in Cambridge, and there, you know, it's more of a garden cemetery than some of the cemeteries that we have around here. If you go to like the really old ones, they look really strange. I mean, there's tombstones that are just kind of crammed together, and it's, you know, chock a block, because, okay, we've had, you know, we've had white European people here since the 1600s, so, you know, those all, and you'll see a lot of these family plots that are kind of randomly in places, you know, people that just move to a certain locality and put down roots, and, you know, just buried the loved ones in the, you know, more or less, I'd say the backyard, but just, you know, on their land, where, you know, which was the family property, and, you know, so, but this one, I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it has very prominently this sort of a mausoleum type setup, and on one side of it is this statue of, definitely one of those, you know, ornate Victorian era, you know, strange symbolism, almost sort of you know, neoclassicism, neoclassical Greco-Romanesque type stuff. It's this woman with sort of a cloak draped over her shoulders, and she's sort of holding it up from her face, and she's wearing this sort of, you know, Grecian gown that's sort of sliding off her shoulders, and it's a very, very moody Gothic statue, and it's on the tomb of the Bonney family. So there has been this very strange legend that cropped up about the statue. There were some people that, some locals that thought it was a statue of a witch, and they were trying to say, "Oh, this is where one of the people from the Salem witch trials was buried," and all that. And it's like, no, actually, the Bonney family lived in Lowell in like the 1800s, so who knows, but they could have been descended from people that had something to do with the Salem witch hysteria, because there's a lot of descendants from, people that lived in that town or in that locality when all that craziness was going down, and, yours truly can attest to that, descended from Hugh Jones here. So, kind of playing with that, playing with the local lore, and there's some weird myth involving, supposedly the spirit of which body is trying to be reincarnated, and there's something involving a weird tree where she's supposed to be reborn from, and I'm thinking, what? I know there's a weird tree like being somewhere in Lovecraft lore. Oh yes! Some of the depictions of Shub-Niggurath, the mother of 1,000 young, are kind of like a weird eldritch tree with lots of roots and trunks and branches and just plain, what the heck, So I'm kind of playing with that, so in some ways, it's kind of turning into, it's playing with that, but there's also some elements of Dreams in the Witch House that are by, another Lovecraft stories that are kind of crawling into this, so it's not exactly Dreams in the Witch House with a mausoleum, but kind of, sort of, things try to break through from another dimension and mess with people and whatnot, so that one, I've only got, like, the opening paragraphs written on it, and I'm rather dismayed by this, because it's like, I gotta work on this thing and get it finished, because it's going to get to be crazy season. Next month is, October. I'm gonna have several, events and things coming up. I've already, inking the details on a reading down in Providence early in October, and I believe we're still, the New England Horror Writers are going to be doing their annual booth at the Salem Outdoor Market the last weekend of October during Haunted Happenings. I think that finally went through, and I'm going to be taking part in that, at least one day of it. I don't know if I'll be taking part Sunday, because it seems to wind up being a crazy, mashed up kind of day for me, but we'll see. But, yeah, I'm going to have some stuff going on, so it's like, I gotta find some time to write this thing and get it written. So, especially this one, because I really want to be in this book, because, these are my peeps. I want to have a story in the same book with my peeps, So, trying to get some work done on that. And last but not least is another project that I'm kind of am poking at for something very important. It's like, I almost don't want to talk about this one, because I'm worried that talking about it will jinx it, because it seems like sometimes when I talk things up, it winds up causing things to fall through, and I could just be overthinking it. We know I'm very good at overthinking things, so. So, those are the projects that are on the project docket, i.e. the series of post-it notes with titles and dates and things jotted on them that I have stuck to the side of my laptop monitor, as reminders. You gotta work on this thing, get it finished, please. So that's all the projects that I'm working on right now. There was one science fiction project that I had been working on, but I wound up shelving that because they were looking more for like an extreme horror kind of story, and mine wound up being very psychological. It had to do with, machine intelligences not exactly rising up against their creators, but just, the intersection between man and machine not always being the most congenial thing, we'll say. And the thing that I was working on, it wound up being more, okay, yeah, it had this sort of, not exactly your standard issue, robot kills creator, but it was more like, robot has, self-destructive owner, and robot allows self-destructive owner to self-destruct. So it's definitely violating one of Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, but doing it in a way that's a bit non-traditional. because that's how I roll. And we're just going to say that said robot had reasons for allowing self-destructive owner to self-destruct, and we're going to kind of leave it at that, because hopefully I can resurrect this story for some other market. I mean, there's bound to be some science fiction market that's looking for this kind of story, so I mean, I've had times when I've worked on projects that weren't quite panning out the way the market seemed to want it to go, so I wound up just shelving the thing and sending it somewhere else. I mean, I've had things that, just plain fell through with one market, and I sent it to another market, and they were like, hey, this is great, we'll take it, Case in point, Stranding Off Scudic Point, which I wrote for a young adult fiction magazine, sort of literary journal, and where they were looking for stories about hauntings. And I was kind of playing this up, your past haunting you, and in this case, it's somewhat literal, but didn't quite pan out, and there's a part of me that's a little disappointed in that, but it wound up going to a much better home, which was Wicked Haunted from the New England Horror Writers, which was their lovely anthology that came out last year, and which got an honorable mention in the year's best horror from Ellen Datlow, which, yay, makes me really squee, So anyway, and I actually I think that wound up generating some chatter for the anthology, because as I'm following the metrics for it on my Amazon.com author sort of author page dashboard thingamabob, that mention gave it a real boost in sales, which, yay, that makes me feel really good, because hey, it's an anthology that I'm proud to be a part of, and I'm glad that somebody who's one of the movers and shakers in the field of horror liked it enough to give it a shout out, and it's, folks are reading the book and hopefully and enjoying it, and it's getting my story out there, and so I hate to use the cliche, any publicity is good publicity, but hey, it's a little bit of publicity, and it's great that something that I'm a part of got a shout out from somebody that obviously cared enough to say, hey, this is a cool anthology, check it out, So, and with that, I feel like I'm starting to ramble a bit, so I'm gonna end this here and get this posted. And in the meantime, I should be getting back to my work too. So in the meantime, you folks have an awesome autumn, and you all keep things creepy.